first moved into Roosevelt, we just renovated a building and we leased it from a family that owned a square block of downtown. And it was fun, and we got a lot of attention, and a lot of people were saying, "No, that's a pretty cool office space you have. I'm interested in doing the same thing." And then after about 10 years of practicing in Roosevelt, we got an opportunity with a friend of ours who we'd done other renovation work with to actually build a new building in the warehouse district. And that's what we ended up doing. And we asked that gentleman, Mark Abramowitz, we said, "Mark, we'd be interested in doing this, but we'd like to be part owners of the building also. Would you consider that?" And he said, yes, he sure would. So that's what we did.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Brian Cassidy, the president and CEO of CCBG Architects and chairperson of the Phoenix Warehouse District Council. He's a graduate from Arizona State University College of Architecture. Brian joined CCBG in 1981 and became president in 1988. Over his 40-plus year career, he has led the design and construction of churches, civic spaces, and urban developments across the Southwest and beyond. Brian is a past president of both the AIA Central Arizona and AIA Arizona, and received the AIA Arizona Architects Medal in 2014, which is the highest honor bestowed by the chapter. He holds memberships in the Architectural Institute of British Columbia and NCARB, and the Interfaith Forum on Religion, Art, and Architecture. He's deeply engaged in his community. Brian sits on boards for the Phoenix Community Alliance, Downtown Phoenix CDC, and Downtown YMCA. And with all that said, Brian, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, guys. Great to be here.
I had to hold myself back because every time we have somebody that is from ASU, I almost always say "Go Devils" right afterwards. So now I have to say it now to make it even more known. Go Devils. So yes, that's
all season starting.
I know, it's exciting. I'm very excited. I'll be at the first game, which is on the 30th. So
I'm going to watch it on TV.
Yeah. Awesome. So I said a bunch of nice things, but tell us the true origin story. How did you get into architecture? And then tell us about CCBG.
Well, when I was a young boy, probably 8 years old, my parents worked with an architect to design their home, and was just fascinated by the process, the construction. And be honest with you, when you're an 8-year-old, you probably don't know the difference between a builder and an architect. But I liked it all, and I decided that year that I want to be an architect. 59 years later, I'm still doing it. So that's the origin.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I ended up, graduated from ASU quite a while ago, and I was offered a job at this same firm. I was the new guy. I was, firm used to hire one ASU grad every year, and I was the lucky grad that year. So I've started and worked my way up to managing partner and still here. So pretty
That's
much
amazing.
One job on my resume as an adult. So.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they'd asked about resume stuff, and I'm same thing where I've been at Spot for so long. I'm like, this is not my expertise. I don't bounce jobs. So to you even more so than that, what does that mean to have a longevity at one place that long? Like what do you see as that does for a culture, as well as what do you see as in new people start at the firm?
Well, when I started here, back in the 80s, I think every architecture grad eventually felt they were going to end up in California. It was kind of the natural path, keep moving west. But I didn't. worked with some great people that I had some good mentoring when I was a young architect. And I stayed here. And about 35 years ago, we got very interested in downtown Phoenix. Phoenix had just hit rock bottom. There was not much going on down here. A lot of people worked downtown, but they just fled downtown in the evening and so forth. So a handful of us were passionate enough to believe that we could stamp for downtown to reinvent itself and become a world-class city. So that's kind of been our personal mission statement, and my personal mission statement ever since is to let's roll up our sleeves and advocate for rebuilding the city and make it truly a world-class city. So that's why I stayed with the firm, and we eventually moved the firm downtown about 33 years ago. It actually took 2 years to find a place we could move into because there wasn't much available that even the real estate owners actually wanted to renovate a building. They really weren't that interested. Didn't think downtown was a valuable place, but now it is. We're happy we did it, and we're still a big part of what's going on down here. And every day I want to get up and make it a better place. So that's my story.
Great.
It's awesome. I mean, it's changed a little bit since, 30 something years ago, and the actual boom. I mean, you might want to describe what it looked like back then versus today, because I've been there, and
I would say downtown Phoenix is unique, and it is of our major U.S. cities, we have the youngest downtown, period, in the entire United States. It's also the only major arid, desert environment downtown. And our downtown was just destroyed by the post-World War II suburban sprawl, the inventing of the freeway system that came as, a reaction to how Hitler moved troops around Germany in the Autobahn, got adopted by Eisenhower to literally let's connect the major U.S. cities with the freeway system. And was great for the country, but it was terrible for Phoenix because everybody moved out of downtown and a lot of great buildings just sat vacant and decayed for several generations from that perspective. So that's why we said we can renovate these buildings. Other cities had already done it. If you want a model of what Phoenix looks like, or it's going to look like, go to Denver, go to San Diego, go to Salt Lake City, go to the Kansas City, cities like that have already reinvented themselves in that perspective. So we decided, let's be part of that. We know it's going to happen. Let's ride those coattails and advocate for doing it well. So that's where we're at this point.
You obviously both advocacy as well as the firm itself have massive impact in that area. Let's talk about the firm first. What is the firm doing? What makes the firm unique in regards to creating that impact?
Right now, we're 26 architects and interior designers. We run what we call a very lean model. We're the anti-corporate firm. It's work hard, play hard. Everybody here works on projects most of the day. I'm the only one that has any sort of business or administrative within the office itself. So that's unique for the scale of the work that we're doing from that perspective. But what it does is we create this model that our clients get to work with a handful of architects, like anywhere from 2 to 5 people on a project. And we keep that team together for the continuity of the project, for basically the confidence of our clients to understand how we got from point A to point B from that perspective. And that model of a business is working. And so if it's not broke, we're not going to fix it anytime soon. So we're still running that lean overhead model. And if you can't tell, I'm sitting at the front desk and I manage a practice from the front desk because this is where I sit now. And I've sat here for 15 years and enjoyed every minute of it. So.
And that's a very unique, maybe the only managing partner that I know that sits at the front desk, which is, that to me, it's very impressive. One, how you are able to manage at such a lean amount without having the admin overhead. How does that even work? I think most 25 plus person architecture firms would say, how can you even do that? How is it possible?
Well, I think we dared ourselves to make it work from that perspective. The reality is we have really good, talented people anywhere from a year out of school to 35, 40 year veteran designers and technicians here. And we let the teams focus on leading the projects and running them on the day-to-day and taking them into the construction phases from that perspective. And my partner, Paul, and I, We're both designers. He is 100% working on projects. I'm more like 50% of my normal month, let's say, is directly working on projects. So I spend half a day on average running the business and half a day having fun working within the business from that perspective. So it just is continuing to work for us. And again, it's unique. And again, I sit at the front desk because we have a 3-story office building. Somebody's got to sit down here and greet people and keep an eye on all our stuff. So I just learned to love it being right at the street. I'm right on the street corner in the warehouse district. So, and just watching it slowly reinvent itself. It's been fun.
You know,
That is cool.
It wasn't always like that. When you first moved in, so when we talked a while back ago, it was very different. Can you describe what it was and then a little bit of your vision? Because what you described, when you initially kind of moved in, because I think it's Roosevelt Row. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we moved onto Roosevelt Row 33 years ago. And believe it or not, there was no artist community yet. There's almost nothing going on in Roosevelt. But it seemed like a safer part to kind of plant a flag in downtown to open up or to move our practice from the Biltmore area into the downtown area. And we literally had to walk 5 blocks to get to the first restaurant. Look at it today. Walk about half a block and you have 3 or 4 options. It's changed dramatically. Really exciting place up on that end of downtown. But we came down here as designers saying, it's going to happen. Let's be part of it. Let's enjoy the ride from that perspective. And we basically went all in on downtown as a design firm. It's not all we do, but it's been a big piece of our culture was advocating for this area. When I said earlier that in the suburban sprawl and the proliferation and improvements in air conditioning and freeways led to just a horizontal city that kept sprawling. It was easy to build on the periphery and it was a little bit harder to build in the core of the city. So a lot of the buildings, we lost half of the great buildings that used to exist in our downtown. They just sort of fell apart or decayed, or many people that own those buildings found out that if they tore their building down, their property taxes would also get reduced. And so unfortunately, we lost a lot of projects to the demolition wall because of that phenomenon. And you can't replace some of the contextual buildings that we used to have from that perspective. So, and the other reason we're down here is not only are we the youngest urban core in the United States of a major city, but we're the most underdeveloped also. So I'm looking out, I see a lot of parking lots. They're not going to be here forever. People are interested in coming in and doing infill work and creating that really vibrant, walkable city that I think a lot of people want to have.
So the firm putting its money where its mouth is, what does that actually mean? Why don't you give some context to what you guys are doing?
Well, when we first moved into Roosevelt, we just renovated a building and we leased it from a family that owned a square block of downtown. And it was fun. And we got a lot of attention and a lot of people were saying, no, that's a pretty cool office space you have. I'm interested in doing the same thing. And then after about 10 years of practicing in Roosevelt, we got an opportunity with a friend of ours who we'd done other renovation work with to actually build a new building in the warehouse district. And that's what we ended up doing. And we asked that gentleman, Mark Abramowitz, we said, Mark, we'd be interested in doing this, but we'd like to be part owners of the building also. Would you consider that? And he said, yes, he sure would. So that's what we did. Built a building that fit our practice on a corner in the warehouse district. And we made that commitment that, we weren't going to just preach downtown. We were going to invest in downtown. And it's been great for our practice. It's been a great recruitment vehicle for talent to come in and work at our firm. It's showing that downtown has a future, that it can be done. You can insert small buildings and they can look good. They can be functional and they can also perform financially. And so it's kind of a test case. So that's how we started doing it. And then downtown became valuable starting about 15 years ago. We talked about Roosevelt Row. For years, nobody built any new housing in downtown, 20 plus years. And then starting about 12, 13 years ago, a handful of developers focused on Roosevelt and said, can we put more housing of a higher density into this area. And in my opinion, that is when that work started to go in, that is what turned Roosevelt Row around into a point where it's really got a lot of cool vibe and great walkability and a mix of new buildings and a handful of small, mostly houses that have been renovated into food and beverage operations and some of the retail from perspective. So I think the answer to the question was we put our money where our mouth was to show that you could do these projects. They could be successful and that some of these old buildings can be renovated if our clients can buy them at the right price and not overpay for them in that perspective. So we demonstrated that if you find an old building, you've got to identify how you can make it work from a zoning and a life safety perspective so you can legally occupy it, maybe change the use. And then we advise our clients on don't pay more than this because you'll never get your investment to work in the end from that perspective. So that was, again, a showcase model of how to renovate some of the work down here. And a couple other things we've been hyper-focused on downtown, and I chair the Warehouse District Council, which we formed about 10 and a half years ago. And we help brand this district of downtown, and we actually help recruit businesses to come take a look at the buildings that are available, properties that are available, and sort of guide them as to what is the process and the timing it might take to actually renovate or build a new infill project.
How do you, since there's not the admin side, how do you go about, you mentioned hiring, how do you go about hiring, or how do you go about accounting, marketing, all these other things?
We, a lot of our marketing and business development is based on building up a network, happy clients and happy advocates and happy engineers and contractors that we work with. I mean, the architecture, engineering, construction, real estate community is really vast in this state. And it's also Phoenix is a big little town, and a lot of people know everybody. And, you know, if you start doing good work, you get noticed. Rather than toot our horn a lot, we try to continue to do the good work. And that, you know, for us, it's working. Maybe we'd be bigger if we had more administrative staff people, but we like the scale we're at right now. It seems to work for us and our culture, kind of the work hard, play hard, anti-corporate look of a firm.
That makes sense. If you are, so the marketing and business development makes sense to me. If we just do great work, we make great relationships, we will get more work. That totally makes sense. What about when it comes to hiring? Like, is that part of that 50% of your days? It's I have to do the recruiting.
Well, it's
and hiring?
interesting. I interviewed 2 new potential candidates just today, just this morning already. So we're always looking for talent. I think any good design firm, anybody that's in the creative world, always has their ear to the ground looking for talent from that perspective. Sometimes when you find the talent and you don't have the work, you take them on. You take them anyway because you know that they've got great potential and they're going to be a good fit in your firm. And sometimes you just need help outright from that perspective. So right now we're busy. We're looking to get a little bit bigger, but not grow too fast. And we're looking for talent. And I met 2 great candidates today. So I'm really excited. They're both coming back for second meetings next week to meet more of the team here. So it's a good story.
Nice. Okay. That makes sense.
So I know that you're part of the PCA. Why don't you tell the listeners what the PCA is? Because that'll then, I think that conversation will turn into something that we have not talked about, which is advocacy. So why don't you talk about the PCA first and how you got involved and what it is, et cetera.
PCA stands for the Phoenix Community Alliance. It is a advocacy group in downtown that basically does so much good and so much info sharing of what is happening in downtown. So Phoenix Community Alliance is mostly a private group of individuals. We have some public partners. The city of Phoenix is a major partner in it, APS, the Diamondbacks, the Suns, and so forth. But there's also about 320 private company members, of which we're one of those. And that also includes a handful of just private individuals that are basically passionate about downtown Phoenix. PCA has been around, I'm guessing, 30 plus years now. They are by far the most influential group of people that help try to make sure that downtown grows and it's healthy and it's diverse, and focusing on business retention, recruiting the companies to come down here. Believe it or not, There's an entire committee on the quality of schools around downtown, and it's phenomenal. There's a lot of schools, private, charter, everything from K to 8, high schools and colleges in and around downtown. And the quality of education out here is fabulous. And it's kind of something a lot of people were just not paying attention to or unaware of from that perspective. There's also a subcommittee that's focusing on helping with a lot of the homeless issues and some of those challenges that obviously every major city is having its share of homeless issues. They're not always the same in every city, but having some passion for these types of people, trying to help them, point them in the right direction, and advocate for more affordable housing to be built in the city in general, not just downtown, but the city of Phoenix in general. And PCA has a separate group, the CDC, the Community Development Corporation, which I'm also on that board. And it is a group of people that have experience developing housing for the most part. Either they're architects, they're real estate developers, they're general contractors that build housing, and or they're lenders that understand the financing mechanisms that are available for affordable housing. And in essence, what our board is now doing is on a pro bono basis, doing the front end legwork to identify parcels that could be redeveloped or raw land that could be developed into affordable housing, and help determine what you can and can't do under current zoning, and then publicize it. Some of these properties are owned by the city of Phoenix, and we're doing some of the legwork for their housing departments. We're working on a handful of initiatives that are in downtown and just trying to build the housing stock here, because every major city in this country has a critical housing shortage right now for lots of reasons. We can't solve them on one podcast, but there's just not enough housing, and what we do have is too expensive for a lot of people, and there's a really high barrier right now for people to get into housing. So, and I always say we don't have basements to live in here like other parts of the country. So it's hard to live in your parents' basement because they don't have one here.
That's very true. Coming from Chicago and being in Chicago, a basement's just part of life. That's part of everything. In Phoenix, we don't have basements. So advocacy, obviously there's a drive because there's a passion for it. There's a love for the city. There's a love for seeing the growth. What does that turn into, and how does that help the firm?
Well, we help recruit companies to come take a look at downtown, especially like in the warehouse. I'm kind of hyper focused on the warehouse district the last 10 years. Not only are we officing here, but I kind of pound the pavement almost every day just to see what's going on and understand the patterns. We now have light rail coming through the warehouse district as of about 8 weeks ago, and that will be a development game changer over the next generation to attract more development that's more transit oriented, meaning higher density, lower parked projects that are mixed use, hopefully, and have the ability to come right into the core downtown by using the existing transit now that's available from that perspective. So that's one of the tools. A lot of times, the warehouse district has all these old, cool, and unique contextual buildings that you really couldn't replicate anymore in today's world. A lot of brick and timber and steel structures that just have, this unique sort of charm to them. And when we see these and people are interested in them, again, we try to help advise them on what you may have to do and maybe what you don't have to do to get them legal to occupy from that perspective. And the older a building is, the more challenges you have to fix. And a lot of these old buildings really they're not air conditioned, they don't have plumbing that works. And it's a heavy tenant improvement, is what we call a heavy TI, is what they take from that perspective. But if you could show somebody the vision, explain to them how you do it, how long it might take, how much it might cost, then the ones that are hardy and passionate about it will take them on. Those that are looking for a quick flip of a building will probably say, that's not for me. This is not going to work for their business model. But a lot of people want to do it. We have these great buildings down here. COVID sort of crushed our tech community down here. We had a really thriving tech community moving into these buildings. And then with COVID, a lot of those same business owners realized that they could successfully work remotely. And a lot of those big companies that were down here don't longer have a real estate footprint in downtown. They're more remote, and they're healthy companies, and they've grown through COVID and are doing really well. They just don't have a downtown presence anymore, which is kind of a shame from that perspective. So we got a stock of great old buildings down here that we're hoping to find tenant interest to repopulate them. They've been renovated. They're in great condition, can move in, at short notice. But right now occupancy is kind of low in this area for office. There are some exceptions.
You said something, and I feel silly that I don't actually know this answer yet, but you said old buildings, we can't recreate them. And I understand you can't go back in time to recreate them, but is it just too expensive to use the same materials? What's the rationale of why can't I build a building that is similar in design and material that a building that was built, say, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and then obviously bring it up to code of whatever needs to be done? Why can't we do that? Why is that impossible?
It's not impossible. It's just expensive. I'll just give you one good example. A lot of the older buildings here built in the early 1900s through the 1940s actually made of brick. So the entire walls on the perimeter of the building are 2 or 3 courses deep of brick, and they're not reinforced. So they don't have lateral stability that the new building codes require. But they have this charm, and they have brick on both the inside and outside surfaces. To replicate that in brick today would be prohibitively expensive and so forth. And every contractor is going to say, you don't want to do this. It's too expensive. But if you could buy a building for 20 cents on the dollar, let's say, and you have room and time to renovate that building, then you can expose that brick. You can have the charm. The roof structures quite often were just open wood trusses or steel trusses, and they were tall. So the average warehouse volume in this area has anywhere from 12 to 20 foot high ceilings. And, as opposed to a new office building that might have a 9 foot high ceiling with a dropped acoustical ceiling, kind of boring lighting. So we have these great volumes. We have this character. We have this great relationship that a lot of the buildings are built right to the sidewalk, and they're very urban, and they're very transparent. And we're just trying to take advantage of the original design, clean them up, make them pass the muster of all the building codes and some of the zoning restrictions that now apply that didn't in the old days, and make them usable. The most sustainable thing you can do in architecture is clean up and fix a building rather than tear it down and replace it.
I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, building code gets updated all the time. Everything because of fire, new theory around fire codes, etc.
Yep.
But then you've got environmental, and especially in Phoenix, you've got heat issues that you have to deal with. Back in the 40s, they weren't really thinking about air conditioning.
No, power
and
was
HVAC
in the day. Yeah. As an example, one of the renovations we did right near my office about 8 years ago, great brick building, and it was built in 1931. And when we went in for plan review to renovate the structure and stabilize it, the building officials wanted us to insulate the inside of the brick so it would have a higher thermal performance. We're thinking that would just kill the character of this building. So we looked for a more creative way of addressing that with the city and with historic preservation. And historic preservation came to the table and helped us negotiate a solution where, such as if you put a building on the historic register, you have to maintain kind of the original texture and fabric and materials of the building. And covering them up or taking out perfectly functioning historic windows in order to put insulated glass in them violates the HP guidelines. So one department convinced the other that you shouldn't make them replace the windows and insulate and cover up dirty brick. And that's how we solved it. So city came to their own rescue in that case. So, and it's a great outcome. And we got a great tenant in the building right next door to us here. And it's one of the thriving tech companies that's working in the warehouse district. That's just one of many stories we've had over the years.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah. I'll tell you one other story about that same building.
Go ahead.
Their building goes from the alley to the street to the railroad and to another building on its 4 sides. So the building covers every square inch of their real estate. And they had no solution to put a transformer in so they could get enough electricity to air condition the building. So we found a way to work with the city and APS to put some of the electrical infrastructure, meaning the transformers, not on their property, but out in what's called city right of way. It took some arm twisting, but they finally agreed that that was the only solution to power this building. And then a second one, same challenge. They had nowhere to throw their trash on site because they used up every square inch to have a trash dumpster. So we made them an offer, which is pretty simple. I said, I'll share mine with you if the city will approve it. And they did. So we just have the trash picked up more often. Simple solution, didn't cost anybody anything.
Or they could just be like New York and throw it all on the street. Right?
Just throw it out. The problem here is nobody would pick it up like they do in New York and London and other major cities where they don't have any choice but to bring the trash out to the street side.
To mention the stink. Those mornings.
You mentioned the tech industry going more remote. What's the feel at CCBG about remote work?
Well, we did a bit of remote during early COVID until we realized the world was not going to end and people were going to move forward and do their projects. So we brought the people back. Our studio is rather spacious. We're not sitting on top of one another. That was by choice when we first designed it from that perspective. But we're in the creative world. We feel that being together, collaborating daily in the same room is better than collaborating over Zoom calls and text messages and emails and such. And, we have people for certain reasons have to work remote for a while for family reasons and so forth. But we pretty much want everybody in here working together, collaborating. Young people get the insight of working with side by side with veterans when they're in the same room rather than, electronically connected. So I think it's a great advantage for teamwork and collaborative effort. And that's what most design studios are. They're very collaborative. So we're better together then.
You get pushback from the younger generations about working from home or from new parents, like working from home?
A little bit, and part of it is some of the youngest employees that are in their 20s came out of college. Let's say everybody here went to college. They came out of college during COVID, and that was the norm. If they got hired, they likely spent a few days in the office and they were sent home with a laptop and they worked remote. And that's all they knew at the time. We're trying to teach those people or give them the fundamental lessons that to collaborate together and to get away from your home, get into a work environment, sometimes a lot more healthy than sitting at your dining room table for 8 hours a day. And then at the end of the day, then you're still sitting at your dining room table. So we're better.
Chris, there's also something to be said about your spaces, right? So if you especially as a younger professional, generally they're not rolling in the cash. So if you don't have that big of a space, a big place, it's like, well, I have to use one room for multiple things, and it's adding your workspace in there as well can become very challenging. And especially, as you mentioned, the creative mind, sometimes new spaces are just part of the answer.
And the second part of your question, Will, was, what about people that have family issues and so forth like that? We all have families. We all have issues like that. Go take care of family first. That's always been our philosophy. I encourage my people, those that have kids, they have a game, if they have a recital or their kids in a ballet, I say, go do it. Because you don't get it back. You don't get that event back ever. It's gone. But you can always make up your work after hours or on the weekend or whatever. So I encourage my people, their kids are in a game, go watch them play. I mean, I did it when my kid was young. I was a boss, so I guess I could do it. But I didn't miss any of his games. And I feel like I got my work done. I think it makes for a healthy balance of life.
Yeah, it's that true work-life balance. Some people think that's a bad term. Other people think that that's part of what we need to be doing. But in any regard, it is, you are working, you are living your life. And if you can get some form of balance and whatever that means to a person, that usually turns out to be a better mental state for them.
Yeah, and we do encourage our employees, if I wouldn't enjoy an hour commute every way to go to work. So we sort of encourage them to live closer to the office. I think to me that's just a natural thing. And some people can't for various reasons and have long commute, but I'd rather spend more time with my family or more time working than sitting in my car stuck in traffic.
Oh yeah, like the New York or LA or Chicago problems that we have. Go 8 miles and you're stuck in traffic for 45 minutes or to an hour.
So we have a handful of employees that could walk or ride their bike to work. Some do, some take light rail at times. Sometimes you got to go somewhere during the day and you need your car. That's kind of Phoenix. We're pretty car centric still, but we are making improvements in our mass transit options here.
That's super cool that the light rail is in the warehouse district. When I was at school at ASU, that was when the light rail came about. That was the start of it. And it's wild to see now all of the places that it is now than it wasn't when I graduated.
Yep. And it makes a difference in the way the city develops. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's a long-term transition for the better, in my words.
Yeah, so the next phase of city planning, you sit on you're the chair at PCA for City Planning and Development Committee. What are the next plans for the city planning and development?
Well, again, the City Center Planning and Development is one of 8 subcommittees within Phoenix Community Alliance. And our focus is on what is going to happen in our city. We have a separate group that focuses on transit and education and homeless issues and public art. But our focus is on the built environment, what's going to happen next, and so forth. And so what we have seen is, you got to realize, going back to, remember, for those old enough, back in 2008, 2009, the U.S. kind of went over a cliff and went into a major real recession driven by real estate and driven by poor banking habits, loose lending statuses, took the entire world down to one knee financially, all because of U.S. federal banking policy. And it took years to recover. During that boom of work that ended in 2008, nobody really built an apartment unit in downtown Phoenix. If you can imagine, was that 17 years ago? Didn't build any apartments in our downtown. Since then, starting about 10 years ago, there's been 4,500 new units built, and there's a handful of high rises that are currently under construction that are all rental housing. None of them are affordable. They're all what we call market rate housing from that perspective. Right now, there's not going to be another big wave for a year or more of high-rise work coming out of the ground because interest rates are high. Our construction loans are 7% for our clients. That's a generational high in borrowing money. And these projects are marginal at best right now because of high costs and still labor shortage and high interest rates. What you see under construction will finish, and you probably won't see a lot of new tower cranes for another half year or more, but it will happen. And I've always said what downtown needed was people. It was the missing ingredient in our downtown was people, not just living, but working. Live, work, worship, and play is one of our mottos. The things that, that have a balance in your life from that perspective. So that's kind of the result of a lot of people advocating for rebuilding the city. And it's going to happen. It's going to be generations of regrowth in this area. And the warehouse district just happens to be the most underdeveloped part of the most underdeveloped new urban core in the United States. So it's a natural, you're going to see a lot of things happening down here in the next 10 years. That's why we're here.
That's great. What about technologies? What technologies are you using at the firm?
Well, we use all the same technologies, any design firm, all the various CAD and Revit programs, rendering programs, and so forth. We communicate with clients through virtual calls all the time, and they have their purpose. We'd rather have face-to-face meetings, but some of our clients don't live here. Some of them are on a trip or on a vacation or working remote temporarily. A virtual call to be the sole means of communicating in our world. But, we do 3D printing up study models that we can just turn the printer on and go eat lunch. And when you come back, hopefully you got what you programmed, got printed on a 3D printer. And, you don't have to sit and do it the old fashioned way. So the ability to communicate is improved with technology. The softwares, though they are getting very complex, and we're finding younger architects are better at the software. And the older architects aren't as good and have to learn it from that perspective. But the old architects are the veterans and know how to design and build buildings and do the technical aspects. And the young people have to learn that. They know the software, but they can't always use the software to design a building that you can actually build and the client's actually going to like and can afford to build. So technology's like everybody. It's evolving all the time, constant. And if you don't keep up with it, you're going to get left behind.
What about AI or automation? You don't have any admin staff, so therefore are there things that you are automating?
Hey, there's a couple software programs that do what we call yield study planning, which is when you plan a site. And, I did one a couple months ago, and I did a solution based on everything a site that I've driven by for 30 years, know it really well, and then we got a chance to work on it. And so I did an idea, and then I had AI work on the same requirements. And AI developed 18 concepts in about 20 minutes. It's really impressive. There were 18 of them, but about 15 of them were not viable. And none of them took into context the site itself, the history of the area. It was just physical modeling. And none of them got quite to the efficiency we were able to do the old-fashioned way of just designing it. But I got 18 ideas and could use pieces of 18 that were viable and use that as, it's like a test. It's like a back test of what we do. So they're getting really good. Every year, these AI planning tools are just getting faster and more accurate from that perspective. So they are, they have a place in our work, and they will forever going forward.
So more for idea generation than actual
direct
usability.
Way I have used it is to back check some of our initial thinking to see if it's still valid, see if they can't reinvent the wheel or a better mousetrap from that perspective. And their solutions will create a 10-page report. I mean, it literally created 18 solutions with a 10-page report in about 20 minutes. I can't work that fast. Human can, but it was helpful. It's like getting a second opinion and a third and fourth opinion.
So one other question, something that I've kind of been wondering, back when you first started versus today, the volume of work, right? Sort of we'll call it productivity measure. If you're keeping at a very similar amount of people, you did grow, but if you're keeping at a similar amount of people, how much has the work increased, right?
I would say, I started in a pencil, pen, and eraser era because there wasn't CAD programs and there were no real personal computers left. They hadn't really been invented yet. We didn't even have fax machines when I started. A lot of young people go, what's a fax machine? Well, I don't want to talk about it, but we had one. You had to have one.
It's a robot that
sounds
like it got murdered to connect to the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
C3PO is what it is.
I don't know, but some of the doctor's offices still use them. I don't understand that, but we don't. But what I can tell you is with technology, we're probably able to produce 2 to 3 times as much work with the same number of people now that we could 40 years ago in our profession. So I'd say the architecture and engineering communities have benefited significantly from technology and stuff. But I'd say on the construction side, every building we do is unique. It is going to be built one time on a specific site with a team of players that will never be assembled together, meaning the owner and the architecture and engineering members and all the builder and all their subcontractors and all the building officials and planners and building inspectors. That group of people will never, ever work together on another building again, ever, especially on that site. Construction industry has not kept up, in my opinion, with the technology race that's going on in this world. And we need to see use of our limited number of construction workers in this country. We have a shortage of workers. They are also aging out over time, and a large percentage of people working in the construction trades are going to retire in the next 10 years to a point where it's going to force construction to get a little bit more regimented, a little bit more into prefabricating where they can, where it makes sense, and then build on site where it makes sense from that perspective. You're not seeing a whole lot of that yet in the construction world, but they're going to have to adopt. Other parts of the world are doing it. Asia's doing it from that perspective. So I think one of the great efficiencies we're going to see in building is going to come from the construction side of the equation, not so much from the design side. I think the design already adapted.
It's going to be taking construction and turning into manufacturing, fabrication, modular pieces or otherwise.
Well, they can build the same or better amount of work in a different environment with less waste and more quality control and so forth, and more, management of the delivery of parts of a building rather than just having workers show up and stack a lumber arrives and they start framing the building. There's other ways to do it. And until more of the construction trades embrace it, you're not going to see it. It's faceted object, but there's definitely a need for it. We need to be able to build faster. We don't necessarily have to build less expensively, but we need to build faster in this country. We need to permit work faster so that projects can get to market faster also. That'll help on the pricing. We have a housing crisis in the U.S. and you can lower the price to help, or you can shorten the time. Both help. But either increasing time and increasing cost doesn't help.
It's actually a good point, because if they were able to be faster, theoretically, their margins should go up, right? Obviously, there's an investment that has to happen before that. But overarching, if you just kept the same pricing, but you did it faster, that means the cost of labor, which is such a huge component, would be to your advantage. So that makes sense.
And if you prefab more components, a facility that's prefabbing parts of a building, a worker can be cross-trained and work on several trades. They could do metal framing, they could do drywall, they can install cabinets into prefab modules and so forth. You can use the same person. Right now, the way the trades work, you're a plumber or you're an electrician, you're a framer, or you do flooring, you're a specialist. And we need more generalists in the sub-trades, I think, and more flexibility and sort of agility.
Man, I feel like
I love that take.
I love that take too. I feel like those are fighting words for some of the trades out there, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it as is, because I think we're run out of time here. So, Justin, I think we've got. We need to ask our last question. You want to take it away?
Absolutely. We love to ask this question, Brian. We ask to everybody. So, if you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
The one thing I purposely didn't do in my practice was learn to use CAD and 3D modeling. And I told myself I didn't want to get distracted by doing that earlier in my career. And looking back, I wish I got a little better at it. I can tell you I have, and I'm exaggerating when I tell you this, I have less than 10 minutes experience working on CAD programs, less than 10 minutes in my life. I'm very fortunate that I'm a partner in in a firm here. Otherwise, I might not be employed anywhere in that perspective. But I do wish I could jump into these 3D models and help more than I can critique them. I just can't manipulate them. So that's maybe the one regret. But that's it. That's about it. Every day I get up and want to come in and do this. I haven't missed a day yet as an adult. Not one.
Well, that's awesome. That's amazing. I love that. I'm sure the listeners also enjoy the honesty, which is good across the board. So if people want to get a hold of you, Brian, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, the best way, you call the office. Our main number, phone still works, 602-258-2211. CCBG Architects. Our website has a lot of information about the work we've done and people that work here and kind of the history of the firms. CCBGArchitects.com. It's a long one, but pretty easy to figure. Or just stop by. I'm sitting, as you know, front desk, looking out at the street corner, and people come in all the time and just ask questions. Some people come in because somebody sent them to us from that perspective, and that's one of the reasons I love sitting here. We're always available.
That's true. Just come on in, walk on in, and Brian will be there for you.
Come on in, yeah. And, we're just trying to help create a world-class city because we think Phoenix has the bones and I think it has the passion to do it. And people love living here for a reason. It's not just that it's affordable. We're not as affordable as we used to be, but we are still affordable compared to some of our cities that we benchmark with. But it's a great story and people want to live here and the economy is really diverse and getting better and better. The built environment has to keep up with the growth.
Awesome. This was a ton of fun. Me and Will had a good time. I hope you had a good time, Brian.
Oh, always enjoy you guys.
Awesome. And for our listeners, I hope you had the best time. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.